Well, hello everyone. I am going to just go over my 2024 year in review with you. I had such a great year, so much fun getting to know different viewers, different artists and crafters, sharing their expertise on the Gelli plate. I am a little bit new to it, so I learned so much this year, and I kind of wanted to go over some of the great questions I got from my viewers and some things that I've learned this year. Also, just showing you glimpses of some of my favorite prints that I made this year and what I've learned and what I'll be taking into the new year and what I will be focusing on more. Keep in mind my comments aren't in any particular order, but I did have a comment from Evanelle that said that her favorite gel plate was the 16 by 20 and she liked using botanicals from her garden and layering the transparent paints on wet strength tissue paper onto canvas. So I have not tried this yet, but I do know that PM Artist Studio loves to use the wet strength tissue paper, and I thought that was a really neat thing that she puts it onto canvas. I've actually wanted to try that, so I think I might explore doing that this year. And I also wanted to point out that I met PM Artist Studio this year. It was early on in the year, and I was introduced to their stencils and I did a review for them. And I've also met lots of wonderful artists from this community. I've joined their Facebook Makers page, and I've actually done my first color combo started this year: turquoise, chartreuse, and terracotta. And I thought that that was a really fun way to incorporate my designs with the colors. I got another comment from Diane, and she said that she always oils her plates before she stores them, but she wipes them with a cloth using washing up liquid and probably dish soap before she uses them. And I thought that was a really great tip. I got several comments this year, like Two Bits Tiger, asking what my process was for choosing my colors and where I put my colors of paint before I braided them out. And she was saying that the two colors or the mix of colors always turn out so pretty. And for this, I think most of my logic is just exploring and kind of playing around. I don't really have logic to it just yet. I mean, eventually I hope that I will. Another thing I started this year was I started using golden fluid acrylics. Again, this was PM Artist Studio inspired. Mariah says you will love the fluids more and more as you use them. So I thought that that was great advice. So I went right to work practicing with them. I did spray some alcohol on mine, and I got another great tip from a viewer saying that she would recommend using water instead of alcohol and you get a bigger lace effect. Some people want the lace effect and some people don't. So I thought that that was a really great tip as well. As I was using my golden fluid acrylics, I realized I was getting these blobs on my gel plate. So to avoid that, I was putting my paint onto a piece of paper. Even sometimes I would use a second Gelli plate. And Nana writes, what a brilliant solution to get around those paint blobs. I always hate it when they show up for me. And I agree, sometimes those paint blobs, they're not the most beautiful when you're trying to make a nice, beautiful print. I got a comment from Calypso Life, and she said that this is a fantastic technique. I've never seen anyone using dry pigments on a gel plate before. You've given me so many ideas for all of the pigments, pan pastels, mica powders that I have languishing in a drawer. Thank you very much. And I found that very helpful to know what others are looking for with their supplies, ways to use them. I'm always curious how I can use my supplies different. I got another comment that said, as a relatively new subby, she wanted to know, she's lost on choosing colors, like for pulls, how do you achieve, what do you hope to achieve when you choose your colors? Another color one. And she was trying to figure out, what's the logic behind picking colors that I was picking. So it obviously depends on the print that I'm doing. My logic is typically colors that either go together or colors that are opposite of each other. And then I have a comment from Linda that said, what is the drying time? I don't know that anyone has really said. And for me, most of the time I go based off of the paint, the paper, and the humidity in the air, but typically I'll let them dry about 5 minutes at least, and then sometimes longer depending on what result I'm trying to get. But typically 5 minutes is a good amount of time to get a pretty clean pull. I do love doing some grungy jelly prints, and I really got into that this year as well. These numbers were really cool, again from PM Artist Studio, and I did get another really nice comment from Linda, and she said that you can put a layer of gesso down or Mod Podge, and you can pretty much paint right directly over those, and you can make your own Mod Podge or clear gesso, which I thought was a really great idea, and I did make some of my own this year as well. Here I'm using contrasting colors in this print, which I thought was really fun with the oranges and the blues and the purples. I thought those colors went really nice together. Jeanette writes that while I was pulling this one up, it was a reminder that it was very important to crack those edges. And Patricia does this from PM Artist Studio, and I also learned this from Eddie Makes Art. And this helped me with so many of my prints, because a lot of my prints before I learned the cracking the edges technique would just kind of peel off the paper. But you crack those edges, it is a game changer. So I really love this tip this year. Thank you. Another thing I got a lot of comments on was my jelly print placement tool that I had made last year with an art easel. This year I made one out of a frame from Dollar Tree, and I wanted to test out using a frame because it seemed so much simpler. And so a lot of you had that tip last year that a frame would do a great job at making a placement tool. And so here was my version of using a frame instead of the easel, which I really liked both, but I think I still preferred the easel only because it was more like the same size as my jelly plate. I had lots of fun with layers this year. I used layers of paint, pearl powder, mica powders. I did these really fun steampunk prints that I thought were so much more interesting in person. So I had used my pearl powders to really make it pop, and I got another question asking about the pearl powders on an envelope I had made, and they wanted to know how the powder doesn't come up when you roll the paint on it, wanting to know if there was a special paint that I used. So I just used plain acrylic paint over my mica powders, and it doesn't matter if it's mica powder, perfect pearls, any of those kind of powdery type things. I didn't have any issues with any of the prints I've ever made with the pearl powder coming off. So I don't know how it does it. It's kind of like magic. Another comment I got from Linda was that I was using the same applicator for all the powders, but the colors don't combine. And this is because I tend to use colors that go next to each other that kind of blend into the next color, or I'll use a microfiber cloth, rub it off, and then go into the next color. I used simple things this year like water and bubbles, and when I used the water, I got these really neat looking rusty prints, which were so much fun to create layers with. Christy was the one that told me to use a stencil underneath my brayer off paper, and so this year I started using a magazine as my brayer off paper, and then I started sticking stencils underneath it to get really interesting looking brayer off sheets. Two Bits Tiger said that she never thought to put the stencils underneath her brayer off sheets either, so I thought that was a very helpful tip this year, and I've loved using that one. So after making these grungy jelly prints, I got a comment from Texture Junkies, and she's a very popular channel, and she likes to use different grungy materials, but she had not thought to use the sprays. So I thought that was really cool that she found that inspirational, and we ended up doing a live stream together this year, and we had a lot of fun with that. I also started using Play-Doh this year to get different textures from around my house, and some of the fun things that I tried making textures with, I got some really cool feedback. One of them was to try to use my embossing folders to get the impression onto my Play-Doh. So I do still need to try that in the air dry clay. I also got a comment from Rhonda. She was giving me some great texture ideas around the house, a colander the back of a fork to make hash marks, dog spiky ball, a cup to make repeat circles, a kitchen scrubber for small texture, a cheese grater, and bottle caps. And I thought those were such great suggestions. I haven't used all of them, so I might need to come back to those and see what kind of textures I can pull just from some ideas that I got. This was my golden fluid paints that I used here, and I got a great comment that someone wanted to know if the golden fluid paints tend to lace when I brayered them. It all depends on how thick or thin I am brayering out my paint. So if I go out thinner, it will tend to lace, but if I go a little bit thicker, then I get a really nice coverage. So it also depends on how clean my gel plate is, or if I've just cleaned it with oil or baby oil, something like that. So I do get different results. I found these to be so beautiful this year. These were some fall prints that I had made. Again, I had incorporated some of my mica powders into these, and they just really make the prints pop. I also had a lot of fun making some mixed media tags this year. I used my spray stains, the mica spray stains. I got these really great backgrounds. And I met Seeds of Kindness this year, Kim, and she said that there was a difference in your paint dry time when there's humidity in the air. And I thought that was a really great tip. Kim and I became friends, and we've had even a little exchange where we sent each other prints and then created different cards and sent them back to each other. So I thought that was really fun this year. Again, just getting to know each of you and getting to have that time to be creative together. For these mixed media tags, I actually was learning a lot as I was doing these, creating texture with different things like drywall tape. I picked up some drywall tape this year that was new to me, and I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite textures now. And just layering up different things. I used coffee filters for my stamping and vellum, and I really had a lot of fun making things this year. I am definitely enjoying that Play-Doh. I had these fun Halloween prints that I had made. I got to use my golden paints, and they made such impressive looking prints for these Halloween faces. In my stash, I found this mesh that was kind of like a screen print and like a stencil. I was able to use some paint with a card and apply that through the screen print and make these very beautiful looking prints and crisp details in those trees. I thought that was a lot of fun to do. Through all the things that I've learned this year, I think the most important to me is learning that there's different styles and there's a different pace for everyone to learn how to do their artwork. So for me this next year, my plan is I'd asked the question recently, what would you like to see more? It'll probably be more cards and mixed media tags. So I hope to see you around in my future videos, and please comment below if you have any other suggestions that you'd love to see or that you found helpful and learned from. So I will see you around in my next videos. And in the meantime, happy crafting, y'all.